replay. I've got a little midweek pod going for you. We're gonna try and get a few more episodes out every week, and joined today by Rush Street Reports, Chris Schisler. Great to have you back on the pod, Chris. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, it's really good to be here. Really good to talk some football. I think we all need a little extra Ravens therapy this week. And
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and they the Ravens themselves clearly are finding they need a little therapy too. They just signed Andy Isabella, who was recently waived by the Cardinals, former second round pick, speedy, kind of short wide receiver. Nothing major there, but it's to me more of a sign that they're not 100% sure on Bateman's health right now. I'd be surprised if he didn't practice today. I'd be surprised if he played Monday. They re-signed Bailey Gaither. They brought in Andy Isabella. I think they're also realizing that beyond Duvernay, Demarcus Robinson isn't working out. Tylan Wallace isn't making a leap. And James Prochet is, I don't know if he's not getting that much run. So I'm not going to bash him for not getting on the field when, can't do anything if you're not on the field. But, he does need to translate his ability into games at some point. It's mystifying. Guy who seems really talented and isn't playing, and when he does play, he's not popping, and you're just why is your talent so hidden in games? Because the talent's there, wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, I think you and I both noted at training camp might have been the best player on the field. It's mind-boggling to see James Prochet not pop in games. You got to figure the opportunities coming, and really it might be a chemistry thing with Lamar in games. Without Bateman, it's every hand on deck. I really think it's a big time for maybe a Demarcus Robinson to step up. So, I mean, we'll see. But Prochet is a guy that I'm just like, talent is there. I'm waiting for the results because I'm going to feel really good for this guy. He's worked really hard.
Yeah, and Isabella, he's a very fast guy. He's supposed to be kind of your speedy slot guy, good hands. Doesn't really show me much on the outside. His size, kind of like Hollywood, has the same issues. Although, I wonder what he does on this team. I also wonder how quickly he gets activated. I'd be surprised if they were like, okay, let's throw Isabella in there instead of Raleigh Webb, instead of even Gaither, who was with them in training camp. I'm trying to remember if they actually have any other wideouts on their practice squad right now, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I don't. It's good they're doing something. I'm not over the moon over it. It's a pretty normal thing. I think as you say, it's more who's the other guy who's going to step up. It does feel like the Chiefs are a good example of a team that had guys. I mean, Robinson was one of them. Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, and a bunch of other guys who I'm sure I can't even remember their names right now, just randomly step up for them a lot. And I think that's also because Andy Reid puts his receivers in positions to feel like Patrick Mahomes is throwing to guys who are wide open a lot. And that's because Reid schemes his guy open. I just don't think Roman is as good as that. And I think that, I don't know how much of a small tweak that is, but I do think that he's got to do a better job of putting his receivers in a position to succeed, in a position to win. I think that's a key tweak against the Bengals for me. It feels like the passing game is Roman just goes back to it whenever if he needs a bunch of yards quickly. They've been doing well on passing early. Their early down pass rate is over expected, is excellent. They're passing the ball plenty, but it just doesn't feel like it's a coordinated attack so much as it is Andrews, Bateman, or Duvernay get open.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think the spacing for Greg Roman's routes have always been a problem. I think when you look at the Ravens passing game, it's really doesn't seem to be setting anything up. One thing I'd like to see is setting plays up, having no rhyme or reason. Maybe do a fake screen and after you a couple short screens the receiver, then you fake on that and throw it deep or something like that. Set something up, have a rhyme or reason to what you're doing. I don't think you're going to get that from Greg Roman. I've grown to expect you're not going to get that. Yeah, I like bringing in Isabella because anytime you can bring in anything different. Again, I agree with you. I don't know if he makes an instant impact, and honestly, It's such a risk-free move. There's no downside. Why not? But really, I think it's going to be about the Jimmies and the Joes. It's not going to be the coaching staff with the offense because I just don't think Greg Roman's going to come up with an answer he hasn't already come up with. I mean, you brought in uh, coaches to help with the passing game, and the passing game is still pretty much in that same way. Lamar Jackson's playing out of his mind for the most part. I know he missed Devin Duvernay in the end zone, and but and he missed Mark Andrews on a big one that could have been a touchdown that could have really prevented this whole comeback. But Lamar's played MVP level football for the most part this season. You take out that level of play from the quarterback position, this offense is incredibly average.
Yeah. I mean, I would say below average by a lot. There's O line. You could talk about. The injuries is a thing. Falele's played really well. I mean, I'm just trying to think across the offensive game plan tweaks I make. I mean, one thing is if suppose Stanley comes back against the Bengals, which we could. I don't want to speculate on whether or not that happens, but if that happens, I think preparedness for different scenarios is probably the main area of tweaks I would want to see. So being a little bit more ready, like if Stanley comes back, do they have an answer right now? And I can't ask them obviously, but does Harbaugh have an answer right now? Is if Stanley's healthy on Sunday, who plays right tackle? Is it Moses or is it Falele? Are you working on a plan to have Falele take over potentially at right tackle after the bye week if Moses doesn't pick it up and Stanley's back? I sometimes it doesn't feel like they're necessarily ready for the potential different outcomes. They're ready for like maybe one or two of them. And so I also think that comes through in game when they're going for it on fourth down. If they're going to go for it, then there needs if they're debating whether or not to go for it, that's kind of Harbaugh's debate. Is how I understand the process. It's Harbaugh is really making the decision most of the time there. Roman needs to have like a player, ideally two or three, ready to go while Harbaugh is making that decision because it just seems like he waits to get the decision, then he looks at his playbook, then he gets the play in, and Lamar has no time to go through anything pre-snap to I think in that play, for example, if you look at the film before that play, if Lamar has more time to look at the defense pre-snap, I think one, he may not motion Davis out of the backfield because it doesn't really give you anything. Davis doesn't really run a route. And B, you see the matchups you want on the right side. That's going to have Duvernay shake open because the entire defense is keying on Mark Andrews. And he doesn't have the time to do that. And I think it's tweaks like that in their process that on the offensive side of the ball that they can make that will go, I think, a long way just in terms of having the offense function a little smoothly. I mean, they have always these false starts and these delays of games. And it is, I looked it up this past week, it is a number that is significantly higher than the rest of the league. They have more delays of games and these pre-snap offense penalties, and they're drive killers. I mean, first and 15, people are like, oh, yeah, the Ravens first and 15 is not like first and 10. It is almost on automatic passing down, and automatic passing downs are so much easier for the defense. So small, I still think it's small tweaks though. Like it's so close to being there. It's almost just tweaks in their process they need to make.
Well, I think you hit on something with the having plays ready. In general, though, we usually get to the line of scrimmage with 13 seconds, 10 seconds on the play clock. And Lamar's got no time at the line of scrimmage. So really the expediency of play calling and communication, maybe that's you shrink the verbiage down. Maybe it's because whatever it is, because we're not in the headset. We don't have a green dot on. But whatever it is, the team has to be at the line of scrimmage sooner. And with the offensive line, it's a really delicate balance because the one thing this offensive line has done a pretty good job of is pass protection. Morgan Moses doing almost nothing right in run game, but is doing really good in pass protection. So, but then you got Falale playing pretty solid out of position. It's such a delicate balance. And then you got people suggesting maybe you put Falale at left guard because, hey, he can actually move somebody off the ball. My problem there is I don't want the Tyree Phillips syndrome where you take a tackle and you put him to guard. It's like the reverse Tyree,
Yeah, and
where
you don't get a feel for the position. I also think
mhm,
Ben Powers is like playing like pretty dang good football. Like really, you think coming in the weakling on this line, you're worried about, other than the tackle is kind of the question mark, but the weakest link maybe depth wise coming into the season and just talent wise was left guard. That battle between Powers and Phillips in Cleveland, where it kind of felt like none of them wanted to win it for a while, and Powers is just the stable guy, and he's not an all pro guard. I don't think he provides the kind like Tyler Linderbaum is outplaying Powers like by a wide margin right now. They have different jobs,
mhm,
different positions, but Powers isn't necessarily an impact player, but I don't think you move Falele into a weird position. I think, see, to me, that would be the kind of tweak, the kind of change that takes away from the cohesion of the offense, right? I think one of the big things is a sense of cohesion on the offense, a sense of coherency in the drives. It just doesn't always feel like they. I think Roman either over or under scripts his drives. I think he kind of sometimes it feels like his second down, like his second and short play call, for example, is like predetermined every time. It's gonna be a run. It's gonna be under center. It's gonna be handoff. Like it's just not. He just doesn't mix it up that much. And I think he just gets too predictable based on his tendencies. There was a stat I saw about the percentage of times the Ravens pass with likely on the field, which I think went down this past week, but is still substantial. And it's tweaks like that. I think this offense works. The playbook works with the players we have. It's built for the players we have, but it's got to be deployed and used effectively. And Roman does such a good job with that. Sometimes it's honestly infuriating. He seems to do so well with it, and it doesn't even seem like there's a first half, second half rhyme or reason. I just think that he I mean, I really, I mean, this is something for the data scientists, but it just really feels like he has tendencies, and you can pick up on them. You can pick up on them as a player, and you can certainly pick up on them numerically and be prepared for situations going to games that, that they have to break out of that box. When you have one of the most exciting and honestly kind of unpredictable in a way players in the league helming your offense, you need to not necessarily lean into that with a bunch of unpredictability and random stuff happening, but lean into the dynamism, lean into his ability. And I've said this for a few weeks, running out of light sets, spreading it out and running the ball, or vice versa, passing more play action out of heavy sets with likely going out for routes and things like that. That I just don't feel like we see that much, or even straight dropbacks from a heavy set to really catch them off guard, right? And
mhm.
I just think we're stuck in tendencies and just a little too predictable on offense. But the good part of that is those tweaks should be, like I keep saying, they should be smaller changes, not anything wholesale, not anything huge.
Well, you're correct in that because the Ravens have trailed for 14 seconds this entire season. They're doing so many things right. It's really fixing the mistakes, and then this team could be 14-2. Kind of not that that's going to happen, but this team could be a monster. This team could be a team that wins 12, 13 games. They just have to put things together. Remember, they were kicking the Dolphins' butt. They were kicking the Bills' butt, and they ended up losing those games. I'm 100% with you. But the things you're talking about changing for offense, I'm so with what you're saying, but it goes back into that rhyme or reason thing. With Greg Roman, there doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason. I don't think I think Greg Roman would be an extraordinarily bad novelist because I don't think he plans anything out. I don't think there's a grand plan for anything. I don't think he puts things little clues for seeds for building relationships or anything like that. I think he'd be the worst novelist in the world. Um,
Yeah, yeah. You keep going back to the same plot points, the
mhm,
same beats.
mhm,
Jackson Andrews works, and I don't want him to scheme any less for Andrews or pass me less to
right.
Andrews. But you do have to remember that at a certain point, the defense is going to start looking for it. And you mentioned Harbaugh before we went live, and
Hmm.
I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to save that for this because I do think that not only does the buck stop with him. To me, this is where kind of the I think we've seen kind of a new iteration of Harbaugh a little bit since Lamar came. It kind of correlated with the team's embrace of analytics and things like that. That he has seemed a little bit of a strategically different coach in the last few years than I would say he was under Flacco. But I think with that, he's got to take the reins a little bit more. I think he's got to be on Roman a little bit more to make these changes. He's not a play caller. He doesn't like taking over. He's it's not his style, and I get that. But then before the game, in the prep, I think that there needs to be more like negative feedback for Greg Roman. Like all the stuff Greg Roman does every week and gets ready for the looks really good. Like they came out, the Dolphins they got out in front of. Belichick got out in front of them, and then then Roman made adjustments to win that game in the second half. They got out in front of the Bills. But I just don't think there's necessarily enough of almost like a creative process, a creative process within their offensive staff, within their team when they're game planning for the week that pushes back on some of their planning that says, okay, but get the defensive coaches in there, get Mike McDonald in there and have them look at the game plan and say, hey, as a defensive coach, I don't know if they do this. I feel like teams don't do this enough, but as a defensive coach, I look at your game plan. I see this, like I see you do this a lot, or, this and that. Get some of that more feedback in there because it does feel like it's a lot of, okay, Greg, go run the offense. I'll run the team and make those fourth down decisions, but you just run the offense. And that disconnect, and Harbaugh wants to take accountability. He wants to be he's the head coach. And I just think that you do have to give negative feedback to your guys, and you do have to step in, especially after so many times of these high leverage scenarios. You're running out of time. You get in these ruts in games that the games never seem to flow consistently for them. They always seem to get in, these crests and these, I don't know, the other term, these valleys. And so, to me, I think that goes back to Harbaugh.
Look, Harbaugh is a guy I respect. He is a coach that I admire. I'm so done with it. I'm sorry, I'm done with it. Not saying you're going to fire him. I'm not screaming bloody murder. What I'm saying is this is a guy with an attitude. He keeps doing those all or nothing plays that just consistently don't work. And I don't care if it's analytics. I don't care if you have a psychic telling you the future. It's not working. And it's just driving me nuts. When you have a situation like you did, 2-yard line, look, the second the Bills know they don't need 6, the defense is put in an unenviable situation where they can't get the Bills in the field goal range, and they basically have to play man coverage and be aggressive against an MVP frontrunner, Josh Allen. I'm sorry, there's almost no team that wins in that situation. I'm sorry. Give me the 2000 Ravens, we'll have a conversation. That's a bad spot to be in. And you sold the defense out. You decided the defense was going to be your scapegoat because, they collapsed against the Dolphins. It's the narrative you want out there. There's a reason Marcus Peters got in his face, because team leadership, and I really believe this, team leadership needs to hold John Harbaugh accountable, or he will lose this team. Because when you lose Marcus Peters, you lose the core leadership of this team.
Yeah, I don't think he's losing Pete. Like it just seems like that's a good old fashioned, like not excitable. And a lot of people are saying like, oh, Marcus Williams, is emotional. I'm like, yeah, look, he wears emotions on his sleeve. He's passionate. I like passionate a lot better for Marcus Williams than emotional. Emotional is kind of, to me, a negative connotation to it. I think passionate is where that's coming from. And Harbaugh's never shied away from that. He's had a lot of strong personalities in the locker room. Marlon talked about it at the press conference today. He said it was addressed. They keep these matters in-house. And Peters would talk to the media because I think that they knew if he talked to them, they were going to ask him about it. And, the whole point is to move on from it. But what you are saying about Harbaugh, I just think generally, I don't fault the fourth down decision. I go back earlier in the game, and I think you want to think about what isn't working by the time they hit that third. Well, you also have to think about like the drive before ended in a pick too. They're not planning. They're not planning for these picks is the problem.
But John Harbaugh doesn't intervene. He doesn't intervene, Nikhil.
No, that's what I was saying earlier. You're right. He does. He does need to step in and be a little more decisive, and if you're going to go for it on fourth down, like that play needs to get in right away, because the other thing is it's not taking long. Even go back a down and say, okay, it's third down. If we don't get this, if we don't get this, okay, beyond a certain yard line, you're not going for it. So know that yard line in your head as the third down play is happening. So right when it ends, you can say, okay, we're going for it, we're not, or, you need 5 seconds or whatever. We're going for it, we're not. You get the play in, Lamar has time. And then even if it gets to that point where you look at what you have and Lamar doesn't like it, take the delay game and kick a field goal. You can still take the points. But by limiting your time, you're just not giving yourself that flexibility. And for a team that seems to prioritize flexibility and versatility with so many of its players on defense, they don't do that enough on offense to me. I don't think they take full advantage of how versatile this offense can be.
Well, the Bills changed their entire game plan, and it really started when they cut the lead to 20-10 before the half. The Ravens needed a counterpunch. The counterpunch didn't exist. They just didn't bring it. They came in with the same plan the whole game, and that gets you beat. And look, you can go back all the way to the Ravens Super Bowl against the 49ers. The lights went out. The 49ers changed their whole game plan, and that game got really close. Now, I'm just bringing that up because Harbaugh in the middle of a game has to change something. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, he's not an adjustments guy. I think McDonald is going to be fine. We're going to get to the defense in a moment. So, but I do want to address the coaching side and the Harbaugh related side on defense. I think McDonald's going to be fine. I think I trust him more to work on making these adjustments. He's young. He's got talent defense. They still did really well against the Bills. So I'm not super worried about it. And I think Harbaugh being more hands off with McDonald to me is more forgivable because of just where the defense is and what the defense is. But it is on him if he notices that there's no adjustments, if he notices that things aren't working, to get in there and say, hey, you need to change. And honestly, people talk about John Harbaugh as like, one of those hoorah head coaches who's, kind of the emotional leader in this, that. He totally is. He also knows ball. I think it's kind of like lost on us that like he's still been a head coach for 15 years now, something like almost 15 years. Like he knows ball. Like he can recognize things on offense and defense, and just I think being a little more present and assertive. And it's weird to say that about Harbaugh because it doesn't strike you as a guy who's not assertive, but he does seem like one of the things with Wink was they would just stick with their game plan every year, game plan on defense, and that he didn't. To your point, Harbaugh did not get in and make mid-game, in-game changes or get on Wink Martindale to make changes, even over the course of the season. Understandably, later in the season, less flexibility given their roster situation. But, I think you do really bring up that good point. Harbaugh's got to get in there. And, I think the thing that gets me is, he can. He knows how to talk to these guys. He knows what he's doing. Whether it's, I don't want to offend Greg Roman, I don't want to encroach on his offense. I don't care I don't care. Get in there.
All right. So my whole point with that is everyone in the stadium could feel the way that game was going. And it's almost every time it's the same old story. And you can just kind of feel it creeping in. And when the game starts flowing a different way, it's like you're in a canoe. You got to change the direction of your oar, because you're paddling the wrong way. John Harbaugh is a great coach. I'm not trying to take that away, but I think we give him so much credit. And I also think the fact that this organization preaches continuity, is his 2019 NFL Coach of the Year. Jackson gave him a new lease on life. I think his seat's a little too cool, and we haven't had the playoff success. And I honestly, I think it would be very beneficial, even if it was superficial, if Steve Bisciotti said, hey, look, his seat's getting warm, something like that. Because they're not going to fire him in the middle of the season. Darn well, no matter what happens, he's coming back next year. Let's be real. But if you had a little bit of pressure on John Harbaugh, you might get change. Because when you don't have pressure, you don't get change.
So I think doing that publicly is what bad organizations do, because they don't have a way of getting that feedback and getting that pressure on coaches
Well, then do it in-house. Put pressure on him in-house.
No, and they should. And I do think I agree with you. I don't imagine Harbaugh gets that much feedback or bad feedback or pressing or no one's going to tell him that he's on the hot seat. But there is something to note. Belichick is look at these long tenured coaches, right? Belichick is Belichick. He's in a category completely of his own.
Mm-hmm.
The other two really long tenured coaches in this league, or I guess you can three. There's really three. There's Tomlin, who is a leader of men who cannot get the most out of who's unable to get the most out of his rosters in the mid 2010s. Does a great job of keeping his defense hungry, keeping his team in the fight. But I think he's been limited by talent the last few years. Harbaugh, it almost seems like has been, beaten by injuries. I would say less limited in talent, still gets a ton out of lesser players, the same way Tomlin does. The not lesser, the replacement guys, the later round picks, the depth guys that starting when your guys get injured. I feel like Tomlin and Harbaugh both do a great job of getting the most out of those players. But then at the kind of cutting edge, highest level of the sport with your best players, not getting enough out of them either. So you're getting all this out of these out of your depth players, out of your rotational guys, out of your special teams guys, but you're not getting enough out of your superstars in the big moments. And it's tough to say how much of that comes down to coaching. The athletes are the ones getting paid way more money to do all this, but it's a theme, especially when the other guy, other really long tenured coach is Andy Reid. And Andy Reid is just a strategic genius. He's a schematic genius. And that's where the trend of the NFL seems to be heading. Dan Campbell is kind of more in that Harbaugh vein. But more and more of these coaches hired every year are, these strategic guys, the guys who are supposed to be scheme, wonderkins. And that is not Harbaugh's strong suit. And the year-to-year stability with Harbaugh as your head coach only works when you get really good, innovative minds in at the coordinator position. They've done a great job doing that on defense, and they just haven't done that well enough on offense. And, at a certain point, I think Spencer Schultz, I do not want to take credit for this idea. I think Spencer Schultz mentioned it. Brian Johnson, the quarterback's coach of the Eagles, is, a guy you look at and say, look at that offense, look at Hurts's development, look at that passing, look at their running and passing game. Look at how their running and passing game complement each other.
Look at the growth of Jalen Hurts.
Yes. And you think, okay, if I want to get on this new wave, I got to do it quick, sooner rather than later, because the other problem is if these guys, if a coordinator doesn't get entrenched enough in Baltimore, it's very easy for them to just take the first head coaching offer they get. Sometimes guys like to be more selective. I know Bieniemy is like to be more selective about, what interviews he takes and what offers he'd even consider. That's because he likes what he's job. He's so entrenched. He's playing with this generational quarterback under Andy Reid. You got to get a coordinator. If you're going to make a change, you've got to do that and get in a mind like that. And a guy who wants to stay in Baltimore and isn't going to just not jump ship because it's promotion. I get it, but isn't just going to take the first head coach job he can. And I think the later you wait to do that, the harder it is to find a more long-term, at least 2 or 3 season coordinator who's not just going to have a genius year with Lamar and all the offensive power we have and then get a job somewhere else. I think
we're in line with that.
Talked enough about the offense. Let's talk about the defense. And what I like to call the 90%. You can do a different percentage, 95, 99, whatever percent defense they've been playing. I think this is emblematic of a few things. Not a lot of defensive starters in the preseason, not a lot of full contact in practice. So, people complain about tackling at the beginning of every season, and I've learned at this point not to. It gets better every single year. The tackling gets better because they do it more. So, not worried about that. It's hard to tackle Josh Allen, which is really not being able to tackle Josh Allen was one of the main differences on the defensive side of that ball of that game. Queen, I think 2 or 3 times. I had at least two chances to bring him down. And couldn't. And something you hope improves on over the course of the year. But I also think Owe, especially the amount of snaps he's playing, no matter how athletic he is, his ability to hit the top of his athleticism goes down over the course of the game. I just think they have to rest him more. They have to rotate guys more. The defense looked so good in the first half against Miami. It looked so good early on against Buffalo, and it falls apart. And part of it is guys are getting tired. I understand certain players, your defensive backs, you can't really rotate them out the same way. But the guys like Owe, when, on, a first, I know this is weird, but like a 1st and 10 on the second drive of the game, like, does he got to be out there every time for that? Like every first, like just things like that where I'm like, think about how thin you are at edge, how much you can't afford another injury there. And the fact that beyond production at the position, part of it right now is you just need bodies. And Copeland only getting 7 sacks was kind of disappointing. Again, he's not like flashing as like, oh, he's going to break the offense or anything, but he does fine. I'm okay with what he brings. And early in the game, the first half, you got to keep OF fresh, I think, for later in the game. You got to keep the whole defense fresh. Queen, it's a little tougher because he plays inside backer, and he had a good game. People say he didn't. There was, I forget the guy's
If he catches that interception, we're singing a different tune.
Yeah, and I think because of that overall, you look at the game he had, and like he looks a lot more comfortable. His drops, like his pass coverage drops, are so much better. And that's the 90%. I mean, that's it right there. They're getting a ton out of your Bynes, your Broderick Washington, Pepe, and kind of the other depth defensive backs behind, really behind Marlon Marcus, cornerbacks behind Marlon Marcus and Brandon. They're working on it. I still think Stevens has done better than he's getting credit for, because I think when people just doubted him from the beginning in the preseason when he struggled and have never really gotten back on board. But they're getting a lot out of these guys. But again, we're going back to what we were talking about earlier. Your Queen, your Owe, Marcus Williams, Humphrey Peters. I want them influencing things at the end of the game too. It just seems like the defense is popping. It's alive at the beginning of games, and by the end of the games, they're dragging it. I don't know if it's a load management thing, a conditioning thing. I doubt it's a conditioning thing. I really think it's more, especially in the front seven, how much you're playing these guys, how much you're rotating your OAs around.
Yeah, one thing I really would like to see is more pressure coming from Patrick Queen from a strategic standpoint. You talk about, do you really need Owe to be pressuring all the time? Well, imagine if you use your safety depth, put Chuck Clark at inside linebacker a little more, have a little bit more in pass coverage that way anyway, and then say, hey, Patrick Queen, play edge for a little bit. See if you can do a little Micah Parsons action, because you're a great athlete. I think you might get more out of Queen that way. And also, it's just another thing to make them guess with. And you only do it a fraction of the time. It's not like Patrick Queen becomes an outside linebacker. You just give the opposing offense another look. One of the big things I was frustrated with was that 4th down where Josh Allen ran for a 1st down. You knew he was going to either throw the ball or run the ball. You knew it was the Josh Allen show. And the idea that you just didn't have more hats on the ball, you let him do exactly what he wanted to do. When earlier in the game, in the first half, you were in Josh Allen's head. You were saying you're not going to do what you want to do. You're going to have to check down the football. It was a beautiful game plan. And nobody wants to have the conversation that this was the best defensive performance of the entire season. And no one wants to have the conversation that if you hold Josh Allen to 23 points and you lose the game, it's not on your defense, no matter what the situation was at the end of the game. And by the way, I stand by it. John Harbaugh sold out the defense. They were the superficial scapegoat of this game. And look, great effort. I wanted to see great effort because against the Miami Dolphins, I don't know what that was. I don't know what it was.
One thing I want to get in there, because you mentioned sold the defense and blame. Mm-hmm. I don't think the team plays the blame game or cares about the fan media blame game as much as we do, or we care to think they do. I don't think, I think, again, there's no really clear explanation for, Peters is, upset that they didn't take the points and put the defense in a better spot. I get that. But I don't think Harbaugh is I don't think the idea he was like, oh, well, if we don't get this and put it on the defense and blaming the defense, I don't think they work like that. And I don't know. I'm not even going to say I've gone back and forth. I'm an aggressive guy. What Mark Andrews said, I think he said, I'm a dog. I like to attack. I like that he likes to attack too. I I don't think we talk about, and Mina Kimes and Dominique Foxworth mentioned this on their podcast the other day. We don't talk about fourth down decisions as like aggressive in a good way. There's always a negative connotation to that aggression, even though it is kind of like an alpha move. Like this is a sport for, I mean, not really, but it's a sport for manly men and they're big dudes hitting each other. And then, taking the points to me is the cowardly move. It's, your offense should be able to get 2 yards, dang it. Like it's Lamar Jackson, but then to me, a field goal is just as good as no points there against Josh Allen. Allen,
I think it changes it for the defense. I think it changes it for the defense.
No, but I mean, again, I could be totally wrong with this, but I don't think the defense's mentality up a field goal is that much different than it is tie ball game, because they're still thinking we can't let them score anything. A field goal means we go to overtime, and a touchdown means they win. Sure. So it does change the strategy and what you can call play call wise, but I've seen all this like, oh, it changes the defense's mentality on how they're defending, and it does strategically. But when it comes to we got to get a stop, I guarantee you Marcus Peters is not sitting there thinking, oh, well, if we just let up a field goal, it's okay.
That's not what I'm saying, though. I get what you're saying. I don't even believe in field goals within the 5-yard line. I do, however, believe in situational football. And to me, that was a situation you take the points. It's the exception to the rule that I text my brother all the time when I watch football. I don't believe in inside the 5-yard line field goals unless it puts you ahead in the waning moments of a football game. That's just me. But also keep that ball on the ground, because if you throw an interception, you see that's a huge yep.
And again,
look, Lamar Jackson, how many people can he make miss? Run around like Kyler Murray if it's not there. Just get it done.
The read option game. Last year, some of their plays with the rollouts were really frustrating because they're too predictable.
But you limit the field too.
Give Lamar a run option, a roll out, and you can pass the sideline or you can cut back and run. Like, this is what I mean when I'm saying, like, you got to take advantage of what you have in Lamar and lean into what he gives you and say, and look, this is just how this sport works. You got to put your life in the hands of your quarterback and say, go win us the game. But do it in a way that gives him the best chance to do so, where he has enough time to look pre-snap and he has multiple options on a play. But I think I'm always going to be a proponent of being aggressive. I think the Ravens keep getting burned by it, and I think it's unfortunately half the time or almost every single play call that they've had, it's been predictable and a little easy to defend. But they've also had an opportunity to score on pretty much every single decision, which is why it still makes it hard for me to go back and blame coaching and the decision too much when
I hate the all or nothing plays. I hate all or nothing plays. Can't stand them. I love being aggressive. I hate the all or nothing plays that you put the entire game on this decision. And I believe that's what you did. And you feel the same way. So you don't believe in the field goal in that point. You believe it's all or nothing, get the touchdown or you're done anyway. So it was an all or nothing play.
I don't think it's necessarily so much get the touchdown, you're done anyway. I just don't think like an interception was in their equate. Like, and again, I was talking about, considering more options and considering the possibility of an interception a little bit more. I just don't think the idea that Lamar throws a pick in that situation is there. And like, it just wasn't in their heads as a possibility. It seemed like in Harbaugh's press conferences, like interception was not even on the list of, and not that it should be, but it goes back to what you're saying. Put the ball on the ground. Do something a little bit more secure.
If they get the ball at the 2-yard line, even if they get the ball at the 1-yard line, it's a much better spot to be in, because then you could be a little aggressive. You could send a little pressure and keep your safety deep. Say, hey, we're not going to just give you a free empty goalie situation, but you can be a little more aggressive, and time becomes a much more critical factor. So I understand if you put the ball on the ground, the second you put that ball in the air, you're playing with it. We're playing with it a little bit. And you just said earlier, if you can't get 2 damn yards, My grandfather always said, if you can't get a yard, you don't deserve to win the game. But you you're telling me you can't push the Buffalo Bills 2 yards into the end zone. You're telling
Exactly.
me you can't push them 2 yards. Look, I have no problem. I have no problem with going for it in most situations. Again, I take the points there. But you're telling me you can't move them 2 yards. This team, to me, has a bit of a softness problem, and I don't know how to equate that because I've never thought of the Ravens as a soft football team. But when you give up two 17-point leads,
You need the mouth punch in that situation, right? You need you almost just need to win on the back of your talent. Like you
Mhm.
maximize your talent, and you like using Andrews as a decoy. Great, but there's no second option on that play. It was Duvernay's corner route or practically
Mhm.
nothing, and again, Lamar. I don't know exactly. I have to go back and look at the play. I don't know what Lamar's eyes
You're
are doing.
calling plays where things have to go perfectly. The
Yes, that is
okay,
a
so,
perfect way of distilling it.
so here's my here. I'm going to put it to you this way: my least favorite play in the history of football is the reverse, because on a given play, the defense literally has to screw up gap assignment, and they literally have to make a mistake for the reverse to work. It's a play where it can only work if the defense screws up. The Buffalo Bills were not going to screw up in that situation. Now, we didn't run a reverse. I'm not saying we did. What I'm saying is we had one option, one path to success, and your idea had to be so damn good that it just was the only option.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
that's just
if Mike Davis isn't gonna run a route, don't motion him out of the backfield. It's
you just played a game of Sudoku where you said it can either be a 3 or a 9. We're going to say it's a 9. Guess what? It was a 3.
yeah, and you can't limit yourself. And again, it goes back to limiting Lamar, embracing what you have, and just bet. I mean, you got to execute in that, but you got to put your guys to succeed, right? If Lamar's really only looking at 2 or 3 reads on those plays, he's not going to have time, in the red zone up on the goal line like that. You don't put together plays, route concepts that take time to develop. They're mostly quick hitting routes. They're one cut kind of deals. And
What
so
about a mesh concept there? What about a mesh
a lot
concept
of
there?
things. What I'm
What
saying is
look,
he doesn't need 5 guys running out on routes on those plays. He needs 3 or 4, and he needs the extra protection on the goal line because the defense is going to want to force that ball out quick. And we're saying all these things and we know them, and yet it just feels like somewhere Greg Roman doesn't or refuses to. And I've defended Greg Roman a lot. I think he's done a really good job building this offense into what it is and the success it's found. But it's 90% offense too. You could argue. Like,
all right. You know who Greg Roman is? Greg Roman's the guy who gets the #1 draft pick in fantasy football. And instead of making the obvious choice of Jonathan Taylor or even going Cooper Cup just to be different, he's like, I'm going to go with Derrick Henry just to be different. Or I'm going to go with I'm going to take Travis Kelce with a first overall pick. That's who Greg Roman is. He has the obvious right in front of him, and he's like, hey, I'm going to be different. I can't stand it. It's
yeah, but
just.
I think he's either too obvious or he's. I think it's either too obvious or too different, right? In that situation of 4th and goal, if Jackson under center and he hands off to Dobbins, I don't care I don't care how the play progresses. If that's how it starts, it's not going to work in that situation, right? So seeing him pass in that situation, I didn't hate what you were saying about the interception. Has brought me back to needing more dynamism in a short yardage dynamic running game. It's really specific, but it should be not super hard. Even now, spread everyone out, only one running back in the backfield, and then run the ball because
Look,
the offense can't.
I hate to be so simple, but how many say Lamar? How many guys do you think you can make miss? Because if you have to, do it. I
Yeah, and that's the thing is like you take the ball not out of his hands, right? He didn't take the ball out of his hands and give it to
No,
Dobbins.
but it was a quick decision play. It
But
was a quick.
it's a one decision play. It's like a one.
Mhm.
That was the other thing. It's a
Hey,
one play. He doesn't have, And we're kind of harping on one play, which is hard when you don't think about, Moses and
It's
Falele both kind of losing their
it's
spots.
the difference. It's the difference between Steph Curry and Kobe Bryant. Steph Curry's always going to take that three. Quick decision, automatic, right? Kobe's going to drive into that lane. He has that option to drive in, get
He's
the
going to make
3-point
sure
play,
the
the
ball gets
old-fashioned
in the
play.
bucket. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether he
No,
has to get there himself. Yeah.
mm-hmm. And
Yep.
Lamar is much more of a Kobe than a Steph Curry. I just don't. I just don't understand why you don't have the most dynamic playmaker in the league's maybe history. I mean, he's Barry Sanders with an arm, baby. I don't understand why you don't have Lamar Jackson make a play on that one. You know what? Against the Chiefs last year, we got in a situation where we knew if we gave them the ball back, we were done. What did we do? Quarterback
Go for it. That was it. And it
quarterback
was
run. Yeah. Lamar called the play himself. He knew exactly what he was going to do. And look, I'm so sick of it.
This is
sick of it.
This is the last point I wanted to get to. Lamar's also getting there mentally as a quarterback where I want him to be getting at the line and making these reads and making more of these decisions. He's getting really good
next
at that
level.
And I think that's the other thing Roman needs to lead into. I wasn't necessarily at this point right after the game coming into the week, but to me, I think this is pretty firmly injuries we'll see, but Roman knows coming into the season exactly what he was dealing with. He's 4 weeks in. He knows what his offense looks like for the rest of the year. I think this is pretty important season for Roman. And I think if there are more instances of this in the second half against the Bills, even if we win 8 of our, remaining however many games, 12, 13, whatever games, 13 games, even if we win 8 of them by, 20 points, because the offense is scoring so much, if we continue to go up against good teams and good coaches and this happens, we fall, the offense slows in the second half, adjustments aren't made, and it just doesn't feel like guys are put in the best position to succeed, especially put in positions to thrive the way Lamar should. To me, that's when you got to go find someone who wants to. The big thing to me, Lamar should be an attraction for a coordinator. A coordinator should be excited to come get Lamar and play with and coach it. And so I think that the ability to ideally recruit someone to coach Lamar, which should be the opportunity of a lifetime for any NFL offensive mind right now. If Roman's not going to get you that in the big games, in the big situations, then what are you here for? Because I don't care that you beat up on the Patriots and the Jets. It's great. I'm glad you do. I also expect you to. And at this point, I expect you to start competing with these really good teams, these really good defenses, like the Bills, like the Chiefs, and consistently, year over year. So I'll end that. I don't want to harp on Roman too much because I know that's kind of the fun topic of the fan base all the time. But I do think this really brought out, I think this game did a good job bringing out the specifics of why I'm frustrated with Roman. I don't think it's the overall philosophy of the offense. I don't think it's how much he loves tight ends or how much he loves Pat Ricard, because his tight ends and Pat Ricard are very good. Josh Oliver's having a really good season. Like Josh Oliver's playing so well. He's doing great. Ricard's playing so well. Andrews doing his thing. Likely is the only guy who, again, this is a Roman thing. Where is Likely? Where is him doing all the stuff he did in the preseason and trying to get him the ball more? Because you need another option at this point.
Well, Greg Roman is anti-fun. He's anti-fun. That's the whole thing. He's anti-fun. He's the most fun quarterback of all time, and he's anti-fun. And it is what it is.
You know what? At a certain point, if you can't get it done against the top defenses, we got to go somewhere else. I'll take the growing pains early in next season of a new coordinator. I can deal with him, a new coordinator, having a couple delay of games or something. But Roman, with this playbook that's 80% the same of last year, this offense that is not the same, but very similar, and you still have the same quarterback, which is key, and you're still struggling to get these calls and get plays off on time, something's got to change. And if Roman's not going to do it, it's going to have to be someone else. I think it's going to have to be someone else. I'm just not sure Roman brings it home at the end of the season in a way that, the Ravens are like, we don't need to go somewhere else. I hope he does. I mean, I have no personal ill will against the man. He's obviously a good coach. He built this offense, but I think it's all in the margins. And for these championship teams, it is all in the margins. It's beating guys in the margins. It's not domination. It's just not how championship teams are built.
I know we have to I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. That was the last thing I said.
I said, I know we have to wrap this up, but I'll put it to you. The moral of the story is the Ravens have been behind so very little of this season. They're doing so many good things, and they're ruining them by their own problems. They're getting in their own way. And when I see a night game against the Bengals, I see put up or shut up. Put up or shut up. It's put up or shut up time. Who are you? Who do you want to be? Make a statement. Because if you don't, I'm never trusting this team. I can't trust this team if they either lay an egg or they have another lead, collapse against the Bengals. I can't do it. They have to put up. They have to put up or shut up. It's that
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah. Look, you're in a dogfight all game. I get it. But you're absolutely right. You build up a lead like that and you're playing from an advantage, and you can't throw away those kinds of games, especially when you do get the chance to build up a lead on a good team like the Dolphins, the Bills, and now the Bengals. Chris, thank you so much for joining me, man. I know I mentioned earlier we're trying to keep this short, but man, whenever I get on the pod with you, I just love chopping it up. So thank you so much for joining.
I get so animated. I can't keep it concise.
No,
I
I
can't
love
keep it
it.
down.
And anyone listening, I don't know if you know, Chris fighting through a hoarse voice from Sunday's game. I don't know how I had my voice because I was at a concert the night, but I don't know how I had my voice. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us, man. It's so great to have you on the pod, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, man.